Part man, part octopus. Marco Jansen is trying to gather the ball at slip. And you can see a moment as he's doing all this where the game goes in two completely different directions. Like if he takes the ball, South Africa still have a chance of a first innings lead, which to a team like them, I think is probably like their only real chance of winning a match against a side like Australia. If it's dropped, Smith probably goes on to make a big score and carries the often a shaky Australian batting lineup to a total that has South Africa in probably a lot of trouble. What is incredible about this moment is that the bowler was Aiden Markram, who was only on to change ends of the fifth option, Wihan Mulder. Now, of course, sometimes your star bowler gets at the wrong end, someone needs a change, so a part-timer will come on. But it doesn't happen much for a bowler like Wihan Mulder, who himself isn't even a specialist and is the fifth choice option. But due to South Africa's weird usage of Rabada and whatever happened with Ngidi today, they end up with Markram and his bowling average of 80 on day one of the World Test Championship final. He only had 3 victims before today, none of which were specialist batters either. And he starts like the lowest form of change bowling part-time. Darty off spin down the leg side. And then when he gets it straight, Smith runs down to him and tries to get off strike. But luckily for South Africa, Bavuma dives to keep him there for what turns out to be a very significant moment. And weirdly, the ball is nothing. It's full outside off stump. Smith thinks he's going to pick up an easy boundary through extra cover. He tries to drive it away. It doesn't spin, even seemingly a little bit. And somehow, against all odds and the history of Markram's bowling, takes the outside edge and goes through to the left of Marco Jansen, where it is, of course, not simply caught. He clutches and drops the ball, and then he puts out a tentacle to scoop it up, but fumbles it again. This is the final error though, as he somehow manages to keep the ball close enough to him to finally pouch it. And Steve Smith is gone. Make no mistake, the wicket was a miracle and should not have happened. It was an act of the cricket gods. And yet, in the end, stealing Smith's wicket with a part-time filth and a double fumbled catch was still not enough.
Cricket boards actually make watching their games almost impossible. I spend almost as much time trying to find where I can view it as I do actually following the action. That is why I use NordVPN. They let me find all the cricket I want to watch while protecting me from the nasty side of the internet. Nord will free your cricket matches. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/good areas to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Watch every match with NordVPN.
There were some who thought that South Africa should have won the toss and batted first today, made 300 odd, put Australia under pressure. But I just don't really think this is that kind of team. Their batting has finally got better, but some of that is also going up against weaker attacks. And even then, they still average less than the Aussies do. If Australia's best 3 bats are Khawaja, Smith and Head, that lines up very well against Bavuma, Bedingham and Verena. Actually, honestly, when it comes down to it, I'm not even sure that is their best 3 bats, right? Which is kind of the issue. But the problem today was they couldn't just have a decent day, it needed to be wonderful. And that was a big chance when Rabada took 2 in and over. In the nets, 2 days out from the match, Cummins came around the wicket and worked Khawaja over. This is exactly what Rabada did, again aiming at his left hip. When Cameron Green scored 4 and sort of tied the battle of the false number 3s, South Africa were well on top. In fact, calling Cam Green a false number 3 is probably a little bit harsh on him. There's no doubt that he could probably pinch there occasionally. It's just that in his entire first-class career, this was the 2nd time he'd ever batted there, and the first was only because of a second innings order change. So this was it, and it was hard to grade him because he played a terrible shot early on in his innings. But it certainly wasn't a success, and there is no doubt that he would normally be a number 4 or 6, naturally. But of course, he isn't even the strangest number 3 in this match. That goes to Wihan Mulder, who averages 36 in first-class cricket, and that drops to 23 for South Africa. This is the third time in a test he's batted at number 3, but one of those was a second innings order change. And honestly, he should have been called by Alex Carey early on here to put himself out of his misery. When he first came out to bat, it actually seemed like his batting was buffering. He was so far behind the ball all the way. I mean, he barely played a shot, barely hit a ball, and then barely troubled the scorers. But his Australian counterpart Green's dismissal meant that Australia's latest opening experiment, welcome to the stage Marnus Labuschagne, suddenly had a lot of pressure on him. And he just seemed to get stuck, like he wasn't 100% sure what he was trying to do there. And at the moment, his movement patterns make it look like he is being moved by, I don't know, an amateur puppeteer. It's hard to see how opening could help him at all. And so when Head was snuffled down the leg side not long after that, South Africa were well on top. Well, maybe not well on top, but they were marginally in front. At the start of the game, the markets had them at 4.1. This brought them back to a position where they had a chance of actually going ahead as favourites. But unfortunately, Rabada didn't take a wicket after lunch. And that was when South Africa having Lungi Ngidi was a bit of a problem. The man plays about as many cricket matches as a club cricketer with a second house on the beach. His bowling looked like he had forgotten his run-up and he was trying to remember how he used to bowl. South Africa had a 5-man attack, and Ngidi's 8 overs at nearly run a ball turned it into 4 bowlers, really. And so that meant that VM Mulder had to step up. And in truth, I'm not actually sure what his bowling is at test level right at the moment. He moved the ball around for a very long time like a traditional English seamer. But he isn't always that accurate, which at 81 miles per hour is never ideal. I actually think he starts chasing wickets. And it might have just been that he did that today because his team needed them. But I wonder if that works for him at this level. In first-class cricket, he has a total of 2.3 wickets per game. So I wonder if he wouldn't be much better off in Test cricket as a sort of Colin de Grandhomme, Shane Watson, Jacob Oram, those sort of defensive seamers as the 5th option. And if you look at his career so far, he's gone at less than 3 runs per over in Test cricket, which is a long way from Jacob Oram's 2.4, but Jacob was 6 foot heaps and played in a much slower scoring era. So in the matches Mulder has bowled in, the econ has been 3.22. So he's at 2.98. He's on the good side of it, but being that he's never been a big wicket taker, I don't see that changing at this level, even if his average at the moment looks okay. In a quality attack, that works really well. But when Ngidi is bowling poor and spin isn't a great option, well, I think you're in trouble. And it was that period where Mulder bowled for a long time where Australia got back on top. Or if not on top, then certainly had their best batting session at that point. It seemed like Smith was on his way to a certain 100 and Webster it was in the middle of an uncertain 50. So that brings us back to Markram's spectacular moment of pure arse. Because that kept South Africa in this match. And when Carey fell after a short nagging partnership, Rabada did destroy the tail. My theory coming in was South Africa was slightly ahead of the game if they rolled Australia for 180. And anything under 220 felt very manageable to me. A few deliveries into South Africa's innings, and it was clear my numbers were completely wrong. The South African quicks seamed the ball 0.78 degrees, which is a lot, and means that Australia probably scored more than they should have. Australia seamed it at 0.5 of a degree, which suggests that South Africa probably underperformed with the bat and with the ball today. And so even though they took Australia for 212, as Rabada said later on, it probably needed to be 160. And the real problem is the 212 was bad, but 34 for 4 was way worse. The Smith catch could have been the difference. Instead, it was probably the highlight, a moment of incredible luck where a change bowler who doesn't take wickets got the edge of the only batter on this pitch who was making runs easily and was dropped and dropped again before finally being caught. It would be unfair to say that South Africa needed a miracle to win this test coming in, but they certainly needed to win the toss and bowl, take Australia cheaply, and then take it from there. But that all happened, and then they got the miracle wicket of Smith. But where they are at the moment, they probably need a lot more miracles just to get back into the game.